What happens when a tech mogul humiliates a waitress in public, but she doesn't flinch and answers with pure dignity? If you were sitting at table 14 that evening, you wouldn't have thought anything unusual was coming. You'd probably be sipping your glass of Merlot, chatting about that new biotech startup downtown, or glancing at your phone between bites of seared salmon. You wouldn't have noticed the waitress with the tight curls pulled back into a bun, the one with the name tag that read Imani, taking an order 2 tables over. But that's where it all started. Imani Daniels was 26, working doubles at Barclay and Pine, an upscale restaurant off Euclid Avenue in downtown Cleveland. She wasn't new. She wasn't loud. She didn't play games with customers or try to flirt for tips. She worked hard every single shift. Never late, never rude, never rattled. That Thursday evening, the dinner crowd was heavy. Suits, heels, expensive watches. You could hear forks tapping porcelain and a distant piano version of Stevie Wonder playing over the speakers. Imani had just finished jotting down a couple's dessert order when a voice behind her barked like a drill sergeant. "Excuse me, hello?" She turned, still holding the order pad, flashing the kind of tired but warm smile that waitstaff learned to master. "I'll be right with you, sir," she said gently. "Just let me—" "I don't care who you're with," the man snapped. "I've been waiting 15 minutes. 15. Where's your manager?" Imani blinked. The man sitting at table 9 was older, maybe late 40s, with silver hair slicked back and a sharp black suit. His tone? Sharp enough to cut glass. A woman sat across from him, staring down at her menu like it had suddenly become the most fascinating thing in the room. "I'll get to you in just a moment, sir," Imani repeated, a little firmer now, still calm. "Thank you for your patience." Then she turned back to her original table, finished the order, and walked off toward the kitchen without rushing. It was small, but that decision, choosing to finish one task before folding under pressure, would light the fuse for everything that followed. Because the man at table 9, his name was Roman Fletcher. You might have heard of him. Tech mogul, worth a few billion. Built a smart home empire out of Scottsdale, Arizona. The kind of guy people pretend not to notice when he walks into a room, but everyone clocks him anyway. And Roman wasn't used to being told to wait, especially not by a black waitress. Back in the kitchen, Imani slipped the ticket into the rotation and took a deep breath. She'd dealt with rude customers before. Some had cursed at her. One had even snapped his fingers. But something about this man, the way he looked at her like she was furniture that talked back, made her skin crawl. Still, she wasn't about to lose her job over some ego on legs. She grabbed 2 waters and walked back toward table 9. "Here you go," she said, placing the glasses down. "Thank you for waiting. What can I get started for you?" Roman didn't look at her, didn't even glance. He stared straight ahead as he said, "Well, isn't that impressive? You can speak and serve drinks. Should I clap?" The woman across from him winced. Several diners paused mid-bite. Imani didn't blink. "Would you like sparkling or still?" she asked, her voice even. That's when he laughed. A loud, hollow kind of laugh that didn't sound real. Then he turned his head, finally locking eyes with her. "You know, if you people worked half as hard as you whine, you might actually get somewhere." The room didn't just quiet down, it froze. One waiter stopped pouring wine. Someone's spoon clinked against a bowl and no one moved to pick it up. It wasn't just what he said, it was how loud he said it, how sure he was that no one would say anything back. But someone would, and it wouldn't be in a shout. It'd be in one single sentence. Imani didn't flinch, not at first. She just stood there, pen still in hand, pad half open, eyes locked on Roman like she was studying him. Not angrily, not scared, just still. Her lips parted slightly, as if she might speak, but instead, she inhaled through her nose and looked down at the table, then back up again. The silence around them was deafening. The couple at table 14 didn't speak. A man at the bar slowly set his drink down. Even the piano track overhead seemed quieter. "Did you hear me?" Roman asked, tilting his head like a child testing a boundary. "Or do I need to repeat it slower?" Imani's jaw tightened just a bit. "I heard you," she said. "And I'm going to ask you again, sir. Sparkling or still?" Roman scoffed. "Is this how you treat all your customers? Or is this your version of sassy service?" The sarcasm dripped, and Imani could feel it spreading across the floor like a spill no one wanted to clean up. She could sense her manager Thomas watching from the host stand, but he didn't come over, Not yet. Roman's date, maybe his assistant, maybe someone he barely knew, finally looked up, her voice barely a whisper. Roman, maybe we should... No, he snapped, without even glancing at her. I want to know what kind of training this place gives. Or maybe you skipped that part, sweetheart. Too busy tweeting about oppression, huh? There it was, the second slap, just as public, just as loud. And still, Imani didn't raise her voice. She placed her notepad slowly in the pocket of her apron and clasped her hands in front of her, standing straight, the way her grandmother taught her to when speaking to someone who's already made up their mind about you. Mr. Fletcher, she said, her voice steady, the kitchen's backed up, but I'll get your order in. I'd recommend the blackened sea bass tonight. It's fresh. Blackened? Roman grinned, clearly amused by the word choice. Fitting. That was it. That was the third time. And the line had been crossed so far back, it wasn't even in sight anymore. Imani stared at him, but not like she was trying to challenge him. It was more like she'd already made peace with the situation. Her face didn't twitch. Her fingers didn't curl. There was no fire. Just this grounded stillness, like a tree refusing to be bent by the wind. And then came the sentence. One single line, softly, clearly, and loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. She looked at him and said, You must be exhausted, carrying that much hate into every room. No yelling, no insults, no theatrics, just truth. And it hit like a slap across marble. The silence that followed didn't feel like shock. It felt like realization, like someone had turned on a light in a room everyone had agreed to keep dark. Roman blinked, just once. For the first time, he didn't have anything clever to say. His mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. The woman across from him stared at Imani like she'd just witnessed something holy and terrifying all at once. The man at table 14 sat back in his chair slowly, and then, from a corner booth, someone exhaled the word, damn. The tension didn't disappear, it shifted, like the moment when a storm passes overhead, and the air is still heavy, but quieter. But Roman wasn't the type to sit with shame, he was the type to fight it. And that's when things really got messy. Roman blinked again, slower this time, like he couldn't process what had just happened. He opened his mouth like he might fire back with another insult, but his words stalled. His confidence didn't seem so smooth now. It was cracking. It's a strange thing when someone used to power realizes they've lost control of the room. You think that was clever? He finally muttered, but his voice wasn't steady anymore. It was smaller, almost like he was trying to convince himself. You think saying something poetic makes you smart? Imani didn't answer. She didn't need to. The room already had. Thomas, the manager, stepped forward from the host stand at last. He was tall, bald, wore his shirt tucked so tight it looked starched. Normally, he didn't interfere with customers unless someone threw a drink or flipped a plate. But this had gone far enough. Is there a problem here, sir? He asked, standing just behind Imani now. Roman straightened up in his seat, trying to reclaim his posture, his edge. Yeah, there is. I've been insulted in your establishment, publicly. Thomas didn't even glance at Imani. His eyes were locked on Roman's. By whom? Roman gestured toward Imani, almost laughing. Who do you think? Thomas blinked. Because from where I'm standing, all I saw was a young woman doing her job, and a grown man trying to humiliate her for it. The woman sitting with Roman, her name, it turned out, was Eliza, looked over at Thomas and nodded slightly. She didn't say anything wrong. Roman turned on her now. Oh, so now you're on her side? I'm not on anyone's side, Eliza said quietly. I just don't want to be part of whatever this is. You could feel it then, that shift. The one where everyone in the room silently agreed. He wasn't just rude, he was out of line. Not because of one comment, but because he'd revealed something about himself that money couldn't hide. I'd like to ask you to lower your voice, Thomas said, still calm but firmer now. Or we can have this conversation outside. Roman narrowed his eyes. You kicking me out? No, Thomas replied. I'm offering you the chance to stay. With respect. And that's when Roman lost it. Oh, give me a break, he spat. This whole performative little act. Everyone in here pretending like they're morally superior just because I said what they were already thinking. A gasp. Someone actually gasped. He looked around the restaurant like he was daring someone to challenge him. You all want to play Saints tonight? Fine, clap for the waitress. Maybe even give her a standing ovation. That'll make you feel better on the drive back to your overpriced condos. He laughed again, but this time it was shaky, angry, desperate. I'm not the problem. The problem is people like her thinking they've earned some kind of moral high ground just for showing up. Thomas stepped closer. Sir. But Imani interrupted. Her voice was quieter now, but it cut through the room like a thread through fabric. No one's clapping, she said. No one's standing. People are just watching you show them exactly who you are. Roman stared at her, as if waiting for her to take it back. She didn't. He slowly rose from his chair, looking around at the faces near him, none of which met him with support. His jaw moved like he was grinding his teeth, but then he snatched his blazer off the back of the chair and looked down at Eliza. You coming? Eliza stood up, grabbed her purse, and said simply, I'll call a car. That was the final blow. He turned, stormed toward the exit, and as the doors closed behind him, you could almost feel the tension leave with him. It didn't vanish entirely, but it eased. Like people were finally breathing again. Thomas looked at Imani. You okay? She nodded. I'm fine. He said nothing else, just turned and walked away. But the story wasn't over, not for Imani and not for anyone who had been in that room. Because what happened next would spread far beyond those walls. The door shut behind Roman like punctuation, a hard stop, and for a second, nobody moved. Then, the man from table 14 raised his glass slightly toward Imani, not like a toast, more like acknowledgement. One by one, people started shifting again, refocusing on their meals, whispering across tablecloths. But something had changed. It wasn't just about Roman anymore. It was about how Imani had stood there, never raising her voice, never backing down, never stooping to his level. People don't forget that kind of grace, not when it's witnessed in real time. Imani exhaled, not dramatically, just enough to clear her chest. Then she turned back to her section and kept working. She didn't want a medal. She just wanted to finish her shift and get home. But the tables had turned, literally and figuratively. A woman at table 12 stopped her as she walked by. You handled that with so much poise, she said. My daughter's applying for server jobs, and I just hope she can carry herself like that. Imani smiled gently. Thank you, ma'am. I hope she never has to. And then came the tips. Table 5 left her a $100 bill folded under the plate. Table 8 added a note on their receipt. For your dignity. And then there was Eliza, the woman who'd been sitting across from Roman. She stayed, quietly moved to the bar, ordered a glass of wine, and waited until Imani had a moment. Mind if I say something? She asked. Imani shrugged lightly. Sure. Eliza leaned in, lowering her voice. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I should have said something. He does that kind of thing all the time, and usually people let it slide. Imani tilted her head just slightly. But you didn't. Not really. Not this time. No, Eliza admitted, her gaze heavy. But I let him bring me here. That's something I'll think about tonight. They didn't talk long, just a few words, but it was enough. Sometimes the shortest conversations leave the longest echoes. Thomas approached her near the end of the night. His face was neutral, professional. I sent in an incident report, he said, company policy, but I noted that you remained respectful throughout. Thanks, Imani said. He hesitated before speaking again. He has connections. Might try to spin this. Just a heads up. Imani nodded. She wasn't surprised. Rich men didn't often walk away quietly. By the time the kitchen lights were dimmed and the last check had been paid, the weight of what had happened began to set in. Not like a crash, but like a slow, sinking warmth in her chest. She didn't feel victorious. She felt still, like her feet were exactly where they were supposed to be. She pulled off her apron, grabbed her bag from the back, and slipped out the employee exit into the alley behind the restaurant. The air outside was cool and quiet, with just the sound of a distant siren and the occasional tire on pavement. She stood there for a moment, staring at the sky, dark and indifferent above her, and then her phone buzzed. A text from her friend Kayla. Girl, was that you I just saw on Twitter? Imani frowned, opened the link. It was a grainy video, clearly taken from someone in the restaurant. Someone had recorded Roman's tirade, and her response. The sentence. That sentence. The caption read, Waitress shuts down Billionaire with one line. Dead silence. Hundreds of retweets, thousands of likes, comments pouring in. Imani blinked at the screen. She hadn't known anyone was recording. She hadn't wanted a spotlight. But now, there it was. And that was only the beginning. Because the internet doesn't let moments like that disappear quietly. By the time Imani got home that night, her phone was barely keeping up. Notifications stacked on top of each other like dominoes falling nonstop. Her Instagram, which she barely used, had jumped from a modest 400 followers to nearly 9,000 in less than 3 hours. Twitter was worse, or better, depending on how you looked at it. She tossed her keys onto the counter and sat on the edge of her couch, still in her work shoes, scrolling through the flood. This woman said one line and shut the entire room down. Queen behavior. Who is she? I want to Venmo her dinner money. This is how you carry yourself. Calm, unbothered, dignified. The clip had already made its way to TikTok, Reddit, and even Facebook. Someone had added subtitles. Another had paired it with a gospel choir background track. A few people tagged national news outlets. She should have felt flattered, maybe proud, but instead, she just sat there, watching herself become a symbol before her eyes. Kayla called. Girl, she said, before Imani could even say hello. You broke the internet. You know that, right? I didn't ask to, Imani mumbled, half laughing. I know, but you didn't have to. That video, that moment, it's real. It's not a skit. It's not clout chasing. You didn't even know it was being filmed. That's what makes it hit. Imani didn't answer right away. Then she said, They're not the ones I work with, though. They're not the ones who'll treat me different tomorrow. Kayla paused. True, but maybe they'll be the reason someone finally listens. The next morning, the restaurant phone rang before the doors even opened. 3 news stations had called. One said they'd pay Imani to do a 10-minute segment. A few influencers reposted the clip with hashtags like #GraceUnderFire and #SayItWithDignity. Thomas pulled Imani aside as soon as she clocked in. You okay with all this attention? He asked. Not really, she said, honest. He nodded. Let me know if you need a break. Will it make a difference? He hesitated. To everyone else? Probably not. But for you, it might. By lunchtime, someone had started a GoFundMe titled Support Imani's Future. In less than 6 hours, it had passed $30,000. And then, like it always does, the story reached the other side. Roman. By noon, his PR team had issued a formal apology. Mr. Fletcher acknowledges that his behavior was inappropriate and deeply regrets any offense caused. He is taking time to reflect and pursue inclusivity training. The comments didn't buy it, not for a second. One person replied, he regrets getting caught, not what he said. Another wrote, he's only sorry because she didn't yell. She made him look small by staying composed. Roman tried to fight back, posted a long thread about cancel culture and public shaming, but it didn't land. Because when the world hears the truth in silence, noise just sounds like noise. By dinner service, Barclay and Pine was fully booked, not because of a new menu item, not because of a special. People just wanted to sit in the room where it happened. They wanted to see the girl who didn't flinch. Some came to whisper thanks, others to stare. Imani served each one like she always did, with professionalism and restraint. But her eyes were sharper now. She knew what was real and what wasn't. Halfway through her shift, a woman in her 60s stopped her. White, well-dressed, kind eyes. I taught high school for 32 years, she said, and I always told my students, speak the truth, but don't let it steal your peace. I saw your video, and I just wanted to say, thank you for showing how that's done. Imani nodded slowly. Thank you, ma'am. The woman smiled. Keep standing, even when your legs shake. That one stayed with her. But while the internet moved on to the next trending topic, something deeper was starting to shift. Something no amount of views or likes could measure. 2 days later, the noise had started to die down online, but the impact hadn't. People were still talking, not just about the sentence Imani had said, but about what it meant. Why it had landed so hard. Why a billionaire could be silenced by someone who made $3.15 an hour before tips. But Imani wasn't reading comments anymore. She'd turned off the notifications. What mattered now wasn't how many people saw her, it was how they saw her. That Sunday, the general manager, Sonia Wilkes, called her into the office between brunch and dinner shifts. Sonia didn't waste time. "We had a meeting with corporate," she said. "They're aware of everything that happened. They're asking if you're open to doing press." Imani raised an eyebrow. "What kind of press?" "Interviews, statement from the restaurant, maybe even a sponsorship. There's a PR company involved now. They're interested in branding you as, well, as a voice." Imani leaned back slightly in the chair. "That's funny. No one wanted to hear my voice when the customers yelled or threw menus. Now suddenly, it's worth money?" Sonia didn't argue. She just nodded once. "You're not wrong." Imani looked her in the eye. "I didn't do this to go viral. I didn't even want to be part of this story." "I know," Sonia said, "but you are." There was a pause. Then Imani said, "If they want a statement, here's one. Tell them I just want people to treat each other like human beings. Doesn't matter if you've got 10 billion in the bank or you're scrubbing dishes in the back. Respect isn't optional, it's basic." Sonia stared at her, quiet, then nodded. That's better than anything their PR team could come up with. Later that night, after closing, Imani walked out into the staff alley with a to-go container in one hand and her sweater in the other. That's when she saw him, Jamal, the dishwasher, sitting on a crate smoking a cigarette, scrolling on his phone. He looked up and smiled. "You famous now?" "Don't start," she said, smirking. "I'm serious," he chuckled. "You know how many people reposted that clip with the hashtag goals? I saw one lady say you were the reason she didn't cuss out her landlord yesterday." Imani laughed. It was short, real. "I wasn't trying to be anyone's role model." He nodded. "Exactly why you are." Then his smile faded and his tone dropped. "You know, when that man said what he said, I froze up. I was in the back and I heard it. I should have come out, should have said something, but I just didn't." Imani looked at him for a long moment. "You didn't owe me that," she said. "You don't have to save me from something I can handle myself." He tapped ash from the cigarette. "Yeah, but sometimes silence feels like agreement." "I get that," she said. "But you're talking now. That counts." They sat in that quiet for a bit. Not awkward, just easy. Then Jamal added, "You know what's funny? I've been here 3 years. Never seen a customer get called out like that and actually leave. Not one. You did that without raising your voice. That's power." Imani didn't reply. She just nodded once, slow. She was starting to understand something. Respect isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, steady. The kind of quiet that makes people listen because they weren't expecting to. But even with the attention cooling down, something unexpected was coming. Something Imani never asked for and didn't know if she wanted. The envelope came on a Wednesday. Plain, white, no return address. It was slid under the staff room door during the lunch rush. Imani didn't even notice it until hours later when she went to grab her phone charger from her locker. At first, she thought it might have been a bill. Then she saw the name. Imani Daniels, typed neatly across the front. No title, no miss, just her name. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single page, cream-colored, heavy paper. The kind you only get from offices with oak desks and framed degrees. "Dear Ms. Daniels, my name is Gregory Lawton, legal representative of Mr. Roman Fletcher. I've been asked to reach out on his behalf following the events of last Thursday evening at Barclay and Pine. Mr. Fletcher wishes to offer his formal apology, both privately and, if agreeable, publicly. He is prepared to meet in person or through a written statement, depending on your preference. This message is extended in good faith and with full respect for your dignity and autonomy in choosing how to proceed. There is no legal action being pursued, nor is any expected. Mr. Fletcher simply wishes to make amends." Imani stared at the paper for a long moment. Her hands didn't shake. Her chest didn't tighten. But something in her gut turned, like sour milk. She folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. That evening, she sat across from Kayla in their favorite corner booth at Miller's Grill in Akron. The kind of spot with plastic menus and lemon slices on every glass. No cameras, no whispers. "You gonna meet him?" Kayla asked after reading the letter twice. Imani shook her head. "I don't need to look that man in the eye again." "Then what? Ignore it?" "I'm thinking about it." Kayla leaned forward. "I mean, if he's really sorry, maybe it's a chance to—" "Kayla," Imani interrupted gently, "this isn't for him. That whole thing wasn't about his redemption. It was about everyone else seeing what happens when someone with power steps too far and someone without it doesn't bow. Kayla looked down at her plate. I just don't want them to turn you into a story and then forget the person. Imani gave a small smile. Too late for that. A week passed. The GoFundMe crossed $70,000. Someone sent her flowers with a card that read, "For standing up without stepping down." A teacher in Kansas messaged her, asking if she could show the video to her 9th grade class. A group of young workers from an airport lounge emailed to say, "You reminded us we don't have to take everything with a smile." But the most surprising message came in person. A man walked into Barclay and Pine on a quiet Tuesday afternoon wearing a gray suit, no tie, and glasses that slid down his nose. He asked for Imani at the front. "I'm here to deliver a statement," he said, "per Mr. Fletcher's request." Imani stepped out from behind the counter. "I told your office I wasn't interested." "I understand," he replied. "He's not here to force anything, just offering something for you to keep if you want it." She paused. "What is it?" He pulled out a sealed envelope and handed it over. "No strings. He's making a donation, quietly, to a training center in East Cleveland. Full tuition for 5 students in your name." Imani stared at him. "Why?" He said your sentence made him realize something, that silence isn't always weakness, it's strength, and that maybe, if more people learned to listen without speaking, the world wouldn't feel so tense. She didn't respond right away. Finally, she said, "Tell him I said this isn't about redemption. It's about responsibility." The man nodded. "He knows. He's working on it." And in that moment, Imani understood. She hadn't just held her ground. She'd moved it. For herself, for others watching, and maybe even for the man who had tried to shrink her. Imani didn't post a long message. She didn't do a podcast interview or sign a deal or agree to a reality show someone randomly emailed her about. She didn't want to be a face for something she hadn't asked to be part of. But one afternoon, 2 weeks after it all happened, she stood in front of a group of teens at a youth center in East Cleveland, one of the very centers that Roman's quiet donation had funded. There were about 20 kids. Some wore hoodies, some chewed gum. A few scrolled their phones until she started speaking. "Most of the time," she said, "you don't get to control how people see you." Some of the kids looked up. Some people will look at your clothes, your skin, your shoes, your job, before they ever look at your eyes, and you won't always get to fix that. She took a breath. But you can control what you say and how you say it, and sometimes that's louder than shouting. They were quiet now. "I wasn't brave because I wanted to be," she continued. "I was just tired. Tired of being talked down to, tired of being expected to swallow it, and one day I just didn't." A girl in the front row raised her hand. "What happened after you said that line?" Imani smiled. "I got silence. The kind you can feel. The kind that makes a man with all the money in the world realize he can't buy back respect." A few heads nodded. Someone in the back muttered, "That's cold," like it was a compliment. Imani ended her talk the way she always wanted to, on her own terms. "If you remember anything from this," she said, "don't remember my job, or the guy I was talking to, or what I wore. Remember this. Sometimes your calm is your strength. Your quiet is your fight. Your dignity is your line, and no one gets to cross it without your permission." Afterward, she walked out into the parking lot alone. No applause, no cameras, just her. The sun was setting slow and soft. She sat on the hood of her car and looked up at the sky, not waiting for anything, just breathing. Her phone buzzed again. She ignored it, because for the first time in a long time, she wasn't just reacting to the world around her. She was shaping her own. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it, and who she refused to become in the process. If you ever find yourself standing in a room where someone tries to make you feel small, remember this. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to fight fire with fire. Your stillness, your clarity, can be the loudest voice in the room. So when the moment comes, speak like it matters. Stand like you belong. And never forget, respect isn't something you ask for. It's something you carry.